Hello, I am Ivan Krastev, a founding board member of the European Council on Foreign Relations, a member of the Board of Trustees of the International Crisis Group, and a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. I want to talk to you about a concerning trend that is reshaping the world we live in. I've said before, authoritarianism is not pretending anymore to be a real alternative to democracy, but we can see many more authoritarian practices and styles basically being smuggled into democratic governments. Today, I want to explore what that means, how it applied during the past, and why it is alarmingly relevant now. In the past, authoritarian regimes openly positioned themselves as direct competitors to democracy. During the Cold War, countries under authoritarian rule claimed that their systems, whether they were communist, fascist, or military dictatorships, offered a better alternative to democracy. They argued that their centralized power structures provided stability, order, and progress that so-called messy democracies could not deliver. However, the collapse of the Soviet Union and the global rise of democracy in the late 20th century exposed the flaws in that argument. Authoritarianism seemed to lose credibility as a legitimate alternative to democratic governance. But authoritarianism didn't vanish. Instead, it evolved. Today, it no longer tries to compete with democracy by offering a different system. Instead, it infiltrates democratic institutions and smuggles in its practices, eroding democracy from within. The tactics are subtle and insidious, making them harder to detect and resist. This shift represents one of the most dangerous threats to modern democracies. In the current era, authoritarianism no longer operates solely from outside democratic systems. Instead, it adopts the language and appearance of democracy, using its tools to subvert its principles. We see leaders who hold elections but manipulate them behind the scenes. We see the rise of political systems where free speech is technically allowed but stifled by overwhelming propaganda, disinformation, and attacks on dissenters. Courts and independent institutions are undermined, either by packing them with loyalists or by delegitimizing them in the eyes of the public. These practices are not isolated to traditionally authoritarian states. They are increasingly visible in democratic governments around the world. Authoritarianism's modern strategy is not to replace democracy, but to hollow it out. Leaders may still call themselves Democrats, hold elections, and pay lip service to democratic ideals, but their actions reveal a different agenda. Emergency powers, justified by crises like terrorism, pandemics, or economic instability, are often extended indefinitely. Opposition voices are silenced under the pretext of national security or public safety. Disinformation campaigns, amplified by social media, manipulate public opinion, turning citizens against one another and weakening the fabric of society. What makes this evolution so dangerous is how it blurs the line between democracy and authoritarianism. In the past, the distinction was clear. You either had freedom or oppression. Today, authoritarian practices infiltrate democracies, creating systems that look democratic on the surface but function in authoritarian ways. This is what I mean when I say authoritarianism is being smuggled into democratic governments. The implications are profound. When citizens lose trust in their institutions, when the media is delegitimized, and when leaders consolidate power under the guise of democracy, the foundations of freedom begin to crumble. Democracies thrive on transparency, accountability, and the active participation of their citizens. When these elements are eroded, we risk losing the very essence of what makes democracy resilient. Yet, this is not a hopeless situation. Recognizing these authoritarian encroachments is the first step toward resisting them. Citizens must remain vigilant and hold their leaders accountable. Independent institutions, free media, and civic engagement are critical bulwarks against authoritarianism. And as individuals, we must resist the allure of simple answers and divisive rhetoric, focusing instead on strengthening our communities and upholding the principles of democracy. The fight for democracy is ongoing, and it requires constant effort from all of us. The battle is no longer just about combating overt authoritarian regimes. It's about identifying and addressing the creeping authoritarian practices that threaten democracy from within. For more insights and analysis on the current information war we are all experiencing today, follow information-warfare.com. Thank you for listening, and stay informed.